The day began like any other for Sarah, a young nurse with a passion for helping others. At just 26 years old, she had already seen her share of heartwarming triumphs and devastating losses in the small community hospital where she worked. But nothing prepared her for the events that would unfold one fateful day. Before we dive into Sarah's extraordinary story of compassion and life-changing gratitude, take a moment to subscribe to Stories Unfolded, a channel where we share incredible tales of kindness, perseverance, and inspiration. You won't want to miss the stories that restore your faith in humanity and motivate you to make a difference in your own life. Sarah had just finished her morning rounds, checking vitals and chatting with patients to lift their spirits. She always made time to offer a kind word or a warm smile, even on her busiest days. This morning was no different, except for a small tug of exhaustion that lingered from her third consecutive 12-hour shift. Still, she pushed through, driven by her deep-seated belief that every act of care mattered. As Sarah headed back to the nurse's station, she noticed a man sitting in the waiting area. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his hands and staring at a crumpled piece of paper. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and his posture betrayed a mix of embarrassment and anxiety. "Who's he?" Sarah asked the receptionist as she logged in a patient's chart. The receptionist whispered, "That's Mr. Harris. He's here to settle his bill, but it seems he can't afford it." Sarah glanced back at the man and felt a pang of sympathy. She had encountered patients in similar situations before, and it never failed to tug at her heart. Taking a deep breath, she walked over and introduced herself. "Hi, Mr. Harris," she said gently. "I'm Sarah. I understand you're having some trouble with your bill." The man looked up, startled by her kindness. He nodded, his voice trembling as he explained, "I had no choice but to come here last month when I fell and injured my arm. I knew I couldn't afford it, but I didn't know what else to do. Now, I don't know how I'll pay this off." Sarah listened intently, her heart breaking for him. He explained that he was a widower, struggling to make ends meet, juggling part-time work with mounting bills. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, leaving him to navigate life alone. The medical bill, though modest by most standards, was an insurmountable hurdle for him. Sarah thought about her own life. Her paycheck barely covered her rent and student loans, and she often skipped luxuries like dining out or new clothes. But looking at Mr. Harris, she knew she was still better off than him. She couldn't change his circumstances, but she could do something in that moment. "Mr. Harris," she said softly, "you don't have to worry about this bill. I'll cover it for you." The man blinked, as if he hadn't heard her correctly. "What? No, I can't let you do that." "It's okay," Sarah insisted. "I want to. Consider it a small way of paying it forward." For a moment, Mr. Harris sat in stunned silence. Then, tears welled up in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. "You don't have to," Sarah replied with a smile. "Just take care of yourself." Over the next few days, Sarah found herself thinking about Mr. Harris. She hoped her gesture had eased his burden, but she never expected to hear from him again. Life at the hospital resumed its usual pace, chaotic, exhausting, and rewarding all at once. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived for her at the nurse's station. The receptionist handed it to Sarah with a curious expression. "No return address," she said. "It's just for you." Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. As Sarah unfolded it, her eyes scanned the first line, and she immediately felt a lump in her throat. "Dear Sarah, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the man whose bill you paid. I've thought about you every day since then, and I wanted to share what your kindness has done for me. When I left the hospital that day, I realized I couldn't keep living the way I had been. Your generosity was a wake-up call, a reminder that there are still good people in the world. It gave me the courage to make some changes. I reached out to an old friend who helped me find a part-time job at a local grocery store. It's not much, but it's a start. I've also started volunteering at a shelter, helping people who are going through tough times like I was. You didn't just help me pay a bill. You gave me hope. You reminded me that even when things seem impossible, there's always a way forward. I'll never forget what you did for me. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Sincerely, Tom Harris. Sarah read the letter twice, then a third time. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the paper to her chest. She had no idea her small act of kindness would have such a profound impact. To her, it had been a simple decision, a moment of compassion. But to Mr. Harris, it had been life-changing. A week later, Sarah was walking through the hospital lobby when she heard a familiar voice call out her name. She turned to see Mr. Harris standing near the entrance, holding a small box. "Mr. Harris," she exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" "I came to thank you in person," he said, smiling, "and to bring these for the staff." He handed her the box, which was filled with pastries from a local bakery. Sarah was touched. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said firmly. "You inspired me to be better, and I'll never forget that." They chatted for a while, and Sarah learned that Mr. Harris was doing much better. He had even started mentoring young men at the shelter, sharing his story to help them find hope. After their conversation, Sarah returned to her duties, but her heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. She realized that her decision to help Mr. Harris hadn't just changed his life, it had changed hers as well. She felt more motivated than ever to continue her work, knowing that even small acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond what she could see. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, please subscribe to Stories Unfolded. We bring you incredible tales like this one every week, reminding us all of the power of compassion and the impact we can have on others. Let's spread kindness, one story at a time. See you in the next one.